Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's stream. Today we have my favorite YouTuber in the data space here with us. We have the Seattle data guy, Ben Rogojan, and he's doing really awesome data engineering videos. He's a former engineer for Facebook. He made the switch to freelancing, so he's the number one guy to talk about for freelancing as an engineer. Yeah, let's bring him in. Hey, Ben.
Hey, how's it going?
Nice, good. Yeah. Freelancing, big thing, right?
Is it a big thing? I didn't realize. I mean, it's definitely fun. I definitely enjoy it. So yeah, I definitely think it will become bigger. I think it's becoming bigger slowly as companies are looking to find more specific skill sets. So yeah, I definitely do see that.
And also because, let's be honest, a lot of companies think the engineering is a necessary evil, and they want to outsource this and don't have the engineers.
Yeah. I think that is another reason, or they try to have a very small team, and then often I like to say that what that ends up creating is one person will know how they built something, then they leave, and then they need someone to come in and not fix it, but no one else knows how it works, so they need someone to come in and just look at it and make it either simpler or help understand it. So that's often a project that I come in as.
So that you advise them, okay, this is how this actually works, and
yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. Essentially, it's like, this is how this works. We could make this simpler, or maybe, especially since there's also this need for engineers to build things custom, right? Like someone built something custom, maybe we find the right solution for it instead, so you don't have to keep hiring someone that knows what they're doing. We can maybe try to find something lighter. So sometimes that's the solution.
Yeah. Well, so how are you doing this then? Because I'm guessing that's a documentation problem, right? If you come in, or if people leave and they have problems that nobody really knows how stuff works, it's a huge documentation problem. So how are you attacking this in your freelancing career?
Yeah, documentation is generally one of the problems. I think I'm pretty good at reverse engineering things. So even without documentation, I can generally have a pretty good sense of, okay, this function calls that thing that calls this thing that does that. So I think that's generally been the way. It's just through painfully mapping whatever the person's code does. Like, okay, this calls that, that calls this, and that's generally how I've kind of approached those, especially if there's no documentation. I think the other side is also just trying to understand from a business side, what exactly is this supposed to do anyways, right? Like, why do you need this? Is there an actual reason, or does it just exist because someone thought they needed it at some point, and we can simplify it because really they only wanted one part of this massive thing.
Yeah. So, for you, how did you get into this? Because you first, as I understand it from your videos and so on, you first had the more traditional way. I'm becoming an engineer. I love engineering, love figuring stuff out, and then get a job at a company.
Yeah. So for me, it happened on accident. Maybe 1 year out of college, I just had someone ask me for some help on a project. It was actually just helping them migrate from Access to SQL Server. I just had a client that needed that, and I was like, okay, sure. So I set up an LLC for that, which is like a U.S. company type. I don't know, does that extend outside the U.S.? But it's a company type in
Germany. We have the same construct, but it's named differently. So,
yeah. Because I always see limited and things like that in other countries. So. But yeah, so LLC, and then I started doing work, and I basically was making almost as much as I was at my full-time job at the time with that one client, and I was like, okay, I can keep doing this. And then the next year, I think I made only like 5 or 10 grand, and I was like, okay, well, clearly I need to think. I can't just expect someone else to give me these projects. I need to figure out how I get projects. So I started looking into okay, how do you get clients? How do you, build trust, things like that. And slowly over time, over the next few years, I built up some awareness about what I do and my skill set. And it eventually got to the point where, I was obviously working at Facebook, kind of trying to consult, and they were just starting to butt heads. So I was like, all right, I clearly need to just do one of these. And so then I eventually was like, all right, I'm gonna do consulting and take that for a quick trip and see how that goes.
Mm-hmm. So then how did that work? You were a consultant then at Facebook?
No, at Facebook I worked full time. Yeah, so they did allow some level of like, doing, like if you had your own consulting or your own side projects, Facebook was a little more open than I've heard some other companies are. In fact, before I started, I had a client that I was working with, and I looked through their contract, and there was one stipulation about basically moonlighting. So I brought it up to my manager before signing it. I was like, hey, everything looks good. I just want to call out that I have this thing. So, before I sign this contract, and I just want to make sure that's transparent and make sure that there's a way that both of this can happen, or I need to figure out something else, longer term. So, yeah, they were pretty open with that. As long as you don't like consult for like a competitor, it's like, as long as you don't like consult for they're competing with, I think they're generally pretty okay with it.
That might be problematic. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That brings up some legal issues.
Yeah. But so you made that switch from Facebook into full-time consulting, right?
Yes.
How long was that? Was it 2 years ago?
2 years ago now. Yeah.
2 years ago,
It's crazy. Yeah. I'm like, oh man, time goes too fast.
Yeah, it was around the time where I also went full-time. So
yes.
very interesting. But I'm guessing a lot of people also who watch here. By the way, if you watch, of course you're watching this. If you have questions, put them in the chat. We're going to address the questions, and because we want to help you here as well. So what I was saying is, a lot of people usually start that way. They work at the company, have their day job, and then they want to do something on the side. Maybe consulting, maybe freelancing. Now, you also pointed out like getting projects. That was your problem.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that is the main problem, right? For somebody who wants to get into this.
Yeah, I'd say that's always kind of at least problem number one, right? Like after you're like, okay, I want to consult in whatever data science, data engineering, Databricks, something specific like that. Next problem is, okay, where do people come from? Where do clients come from? And that's the next problem to solve. Generally, I've kind of got a few videos on this, and we talked about this before before we started. Basically, I also have a course on this, and like it's currently the biggest section, which is like how do you get clients? Because I kind of break it down into a few different areas where it's like, you kind of have to pick one or two that you're gonna be good at, but you'll probably do all of them at the end of the day. You're gonna do marketing, sales, some sort of networking. Vendor partnerships is another one that I didn't realize existed for a while, but especially if you see any company that grows very quickly, like how'd that consulting company go from like one person to 50 people quickly? I often see that like vendor partnerships are very key to that, because like vendors often need help like implementing solutions, and they don't want to hire a ton of solutions architects, or they don't want to have like they're only going to have like a solutions engineer or sales engineer that like knows their solution, not all the other stuff around it. So oftentimes they'll want to partner with consulting companies to like help them grow as well. Like I'm sure Databricks right now is in major need of like people coming in to help them kind of implement, because I've seen a lot of just their growth lately. And so yeah, also I cover things like there's third parties as well. I'm not as much of fan of third-party layers where it's like Upwork or Fiverr, just because you don't have a brand and you're often fighting down to the bottom in terms of like pricing. At least when you start, like you can't really get noticed if you're not going to offer a cheap price, or you have something that people would want. It's not bad, but it's definitely a trade-off, right? Easy to get clients this way in a way, but less pay usually. So yeah.
But so you would say having first identifying a specific skill really helps. Not going too broad at first, but having that laser focus on I'm using Databricks.
Yeah, I think it helps. I think you don't have to spend all day trying to figure out what it is. Like when I first started trying to consult, I wanted to do data science consulting because I was doing data engineering at work, and I was like, I want to do something different. And I spent a ton of time in college, like learning bioinformatics and all these other things, computational statistics. And I was like, okay, I want to apply all this stuff. And And, when I was trying to really hit that space, like I wasn't getting a ton of like leads or anything like that. But then when I started talking more about data engineering, like even just talking about data warehousing, data engineering, like suddenly even intro content was getting me conversations with people who were like, hey, I want to talk. I need data engineering help, right? Because every data science project starts with essentially data engineering. And then from there, like you'll slowly find other niches. Like I found that Airflow is often a good place to consult in because everyone wants to use it, but it's difficult to use. So, figuring out how to balance that for most people is like, okay, we want to use this, but it's hard to use. How do we actually, deal with this? Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Airflow. I'm guessing also you find some people that want to use it but don't need it, or like
So
messed it
sometimes
up
that's,
already.
yeah, that's definitely a thing. Like, yeah, they either don't need it or they've already kind of set it up in a way that's not, conducive to them. I find it funny. Everyone wants to set it up themselves, which to me, there's just a lot of options that you can do that doesn't involve that. Obviously, you lose control, but if you're just starting out, like, especially with Airflow is so easy. Like, if you want to change how you've actually set up the underlying Airflow instance, right? Like, you can do that pretty easily and just have the same DAG folder. So yeah, use like MWAA or Cloud Composer or something like that, or Astronomer. And those are a good like starting ground before you start trying to like set up your own EC2 instance and then have to eventually slowly figure out, okay, if I have an EC2 instance, I need to point the logs somewhere else because the logs will explode in the EC2 instance and all these other little things. And you're going to end up spending about the same in terms of cost for like all that stuff you set up, whether it's an EC2 instance that's running 24/7, as if you were going to just do it via MWAA, which will do all the same stuff, but just adds a little more of that management layer for you. So,
Yeah. So so people want to get into this. You said before we started, you're like, this is your thing. You love this. We said, okay, you need to focus on something. Get the first contract. Get the first people that you work for. What else do you suggest to people to do this? Do they, for instance, need a LLC?
I would recommend, like, if you're going to do this full time, if this is going to be your thing, I would definitely recommend you have some sort of LLC or something. It provides a lot of things, obviously, some legal protection, some tax benefits. There's plenty of reasons to do it. If you're just going to do like like, hey, I'm doing this on the side, I'm making like $2,000 to $5,000 extra a year. It probably doesn't, like, the amount you're going to spend on an accountant and all of those other things that you might want to do if you set up an LLC, and especially if it's like an S corp, it's probably not worth it. But if you start pushing past like $20,000, $50,000 extra a year, yeah, it's probably worth it. There are a lot of tax benefits, and it's nice to have something that's your own little company too. So yeah, definitely worth it.
Interesting, because I think so for me with my academy, it's not super important that I have an LLC, right? Because I can't really mess something up and then get sued for it. But I imagine that if you are a freelancer and you work for somebody, you need some protection in this.
Yeah. I mean, like things can happen. I've been blessed. Nothing's happened. I do most, like, especially once you start signing bigger contracts. Like when I'm working with startups, they usually don't have this stipulation. But anytime I work with an enterprise, there's always a line in their contract, because if you work with the startups, you will likely give them a contract. If you work with enterprises, they will likely give you a contract that you need to go through that's 50 pages long, and you just cross out all their crazy expectations. I saw a contract once where they were asking me, like, you need to have cameras on site and badging in, and I'm like, I'm a home office. There's no. I mean, I do have a camera actually, or a few cameras, but other than that, I don't have badging. Like, no one's badging in here. But they also sometimes have like a requirement in terms of like liability insurance. Like most of them, it's usually like 1 million per incident type level of liability insurance. So.
Interesting. Yeah. So what do you think for somebody who wants to get into this? Because I think you also did some posts like that. You have 6-figure clients where you have large contracting jobs, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But first, that sounds like very very big, and for somebody who's just starting out, super menacing, right? So
yeah.
what would you say? What's the perfect, like the perfect value, or no, or charge that how should I say this? The perfect amount of money that they should work for in the beginning. Like they get a job, how much should this be to?
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, that's a good question. I think if you're making a few $1,000s, like your first project, like $3,000, $5,000, even if it's less than that, that's fine. Like it's good experience. You have extra money to that you weren't expecting. Even if you like maybe underestimated how much work is going to be. Hopefully, it's not that much extra work where it's like you hate yourself, right? Whereas if you've got a 100K project that's now a 200K project, you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Versus if it's a 1K project that's actually a 2K project, it's like, yeah, it's not great, but you'll do it. You'll make the client happy, and then that builds your repertoire and your actual referral basis that you can have. So yeah, like I think that's one thing I always recommend is like you're not necessarily trying to like land this 6-figure contract day one, unless you feel super confident in that, unless you've like driven a lot of projects and know how to like give people what they want. Because I think that's part of it is that as you're consulting, things change, and the bigger the project, more things can change in a short period of time in terms of like what people want, and you kind of have to like just go with the flow and guide it a little bit, right? Like, okay, the flow is kind of going this way. We got to set expectations. We started with wanting to build these 4 dashboards. Now they want to kind of build 3 of them, and like, how does this actually play out? What does this mean for me, and how do I like make sure expectations are set? So make sure you can do all that, because like the technical stuff, it's not to say that it's easy, but like for a 50K project are generally like it's pretty well defined. It's going to be all that people stuff that's going to really you're going to have to like dance around and work with to make sure people are happy.
Can you even manage such a project? Not basically the work for this on your own, or is this that you need a team behind it?
Yeah, definitely. As you start passing 6 figures, you start wanting to have a team behind it. Both because like the amount of work, and also because you're going to send this contract to someone, and they're going to look at it, and they're going to be like, okay, I'm paying you $300,000 for one person. Like, is it just you for the next 6 months, right? Like, there's going to be a little bit of a pause there. Yeah, so I do think that's another thing, and there's. For that, I usually find people that I have a group of people that I kind of lean into. I'm like, okay, we've got some projects that are coming in. So would you like to work on it? Because I need the help. So.
So start small. If you have a daytime job, find a side project that you can work on for a few. Like, what's the sweet spot? 2,000. Start with
Yeah, I'd say
2,000
like $2,000-$3,000. Nothing crazy.
and gain the experience with it.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. What else would people need? I don't know.
No, I mean, I think I do like the start small idea. Like recently, I pitched like my first few like 7-figure projects, which has been fun. Like it's one of those things where I'm like, I did it, and I'm like, oh yeah, like if it happens, amazing. If it doesn't happen, I'm learning a lot through it. You'll have interest. You'll be brought into different conversations. As the projects get bigger and bigger, the people you talk to get higher and higher. So like suddenly I'm talking to people who are the C-suite, and they're like, hey, we want to convince the CEO that this project's a good idea. Like, how should we sell this? And I'm sitting there like, I mean, I can tell you the best thing I can do. You know them better than me. I can tell you what I would say, but it's interesting how people start leaning on you for more than just the technical expertise. They're like, okay, what else can we do to like, really, bring this project to fruition. So no, it's there's a ton to learn, and it's all just like slowly through doing it. You're going to learn how to like better reach out and market to people, or better how to have a better sales process. It all just slowly happens, and I think that's what's important as people kind of go through trying to learn more about like, how do I consult, how do I like find projects, all those things.
Yeah. How? What would you say? How difficult is this to get your first job?
Yeah, it can definitely be very difficult. It's very similar to like trying to get your first job in data, right? Like it's like no one wants to give you a chance, no one wants to give you the opportunity because they don't know who you are. You have no background. Even if you have background in like doing other companies, it's very different. If you're really just starting out, I would always recommend like you doing some sort of networking approach first, where like you reach out to people that you've worked with, you reach out to people that were at your company or that you went to school with, and try that route first and be like, hey, I'm starting this company, this is the type of work that I'm looking for. Do you have anything, or do you know anyone that has anything? You can also look at their like LinkedIn and be like, hey, this person knows that person, I think they might have a project for me. Try to always get warm intros. But that's really what it's going to be like at first. It's going to be you probably like trying to find those first few small projects. We have a person in the academy. It's kind of just a community right now who they're like basically just doing it all local, where they're like going around locally and going to mom and pop shops and finding like they're finding like I think they're like $15,000 a month of consulting work right now. That they've basically done through that, where they've just kind of found people in their own state, essentially.
Nice.
So yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Once you have some, like most likely, or the other way around, how often is it that you have a client and then you continue to work for this client? Is that a thing, or is that more one and done thing?
It definitely ranges. Projects are starting to get longer, so I have a few different things that I'll usually offer. Like that, I'll have like this 3-month accelerator for a lot of companies, often startups, where I'll just come in and kind of help them go from 0 to essentially 100 in terms of like no data infrastructure, some data infrastructure that you can now work with. And sometimes those will continue on for a few more months afterwards. Like I've had a lot of cases where it's like you just keep having the amount of time you work with them over like maybe a year, maybe it's the first 3 months, then 3 more months you kind of work half the amount, and 3 more months you work half the amount, and then 3 more months you work half the amount, and then it's kind of you're like, we're not really doing anything at this point. Like you're handling all your own requests. You don't need me anymore. Kind of situation. But yeah, once you start talking about those 6-figure projects, then you're talking about already like those are going to be like 6-month plus engagements, 1 year plus engagements. So those tend to be long anyways. And then hopefully you just keep getting more work from them or referrals for other work, which is what often happens. So yeah, I mean, for smaller companies, it's pretty common that you might stick around because they're just going to need you for like little things here and there. Hopefully, they've got someone on staff that can kind of do some of the work that you're doing. So that's, I think, the overall goal. Yeah.
I'm guessing it's also sometimes. Shyam, I see your question. We're going to get to that in a sec. Also, because from my experience working at Big Corp, often it's you have somebody there who's doing consulting, who's doing development, and then the company itself is not building the knowledge, is not putting somebody behind it. So you always have, if something needs to be changed, you have a service contract with somebody who does that.
Yeah, especially for like bigger enterprises. I think that's very common. I do try to usually put some sort of level, like especially for bigger projects, some level of like change management into my contracts. So like some level of like, hey, we're going to educate your team. We're not just going to like build this and like leave. We want to like have some maybe hour-long trainings that we go through things. We'll record things. We'll like make some quick documentation, make sure you can understand it, walk through that documentation, just various levels of like change, like continuing education kind of for them. There's other things you need to do in change management besides education. Education is just one of the major pieces. But like, again, as you start going through bigger and bigger contracts, you start learning about these other things that especially like enterprises care about. Like, oh yeah, if you talk about change management and governance and these things, like they will understand that you get this beyond just doing the work. Because, as a consultant, it's not, or a freelancer, early on, your smaller projects, it's just about doing the work. Like they just want the work done. Great, it's done, it works, it doesn't break, perfect. as you go towards enterprises and larger contracts, it's like, okay, we need the work done, obviously, but we need project management, we need change management, we need all these other things because it's a bigger, you're part of a bigger institution now, and there's a lot more pieces that are involved, not just you. It's like, hey, if we're going to switch dashboarding solutions, we have 10 teams that need to get convinced that this dashboarding solution is the right solution, or they're going to keep using their old one, which is then a project failure. Even if you successfully, launch this whole dashboard and everything, that's a success. But if people don't adopt it, then it's a failure overall.
Yeah, that can happen. I have seen that.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to get people to move, to switch.
Yeah, that's definitely. And there are always some people who don't want to. And, doesn't matter. So the question here that Shyam says, do you suggest freelancing for somebody who's just a newbie in the field of data engineering, or would working a company full time be better for learning opportunities, getting mentors, so on?
Yeah. I mean, like if you can get a full time job, I'd always say like that's a great place to start first, and then if you can either consult on the side, if that's possible, that's great. If you happen, like if for example, you can't find a full time job, but you have the opportunity to consult or do some freelancing, I mean, yeah, I'd do that just so I can, one, gain experience, two, earn a little extra money, especially, we all need to get paid. So I think it's always best is to start learning first, right? Like it's hard to consult, especially like there's kind of this interesting division between like freelancing, contracting, and consulting. But especially on the consulting side, where the reason people are paying you is to kind of have advice, not just have the work done. It's really hard to do that if you haven't done the work. Versus freelancing and contracting, generally people are just like, hey, build me, a web page, or build me this data pipeline, or build me this table. It's very, very concise work. But yeah, always recommend, like, yeah, if you can work a few years at a job, figure out if you like it, figure out what you're good at first, and then look into freelancing. That's probably good. But these days I feel bad. It feels like everyone needs a side hustle. So maybe you have to get a full-time job and side hustle just to afford a normal life, it feels like. So
yeah, I can see that this might be difficult to just get into this. But what do you say? Because what I tell my students always, for getting a job, you need to have a portfolio of projects, personal projects that you've done, that you can also talk about. And also it's absolutely good if you start talking about this on the internet. Just like we did, where we're doing YouTube videos and so on, but like create LinkedIn posts about this. Start to try to have a conversation around this and be the conversation lead in this. Would you say that's for a freelancer?
Yeah. No, I think that's super valuable for a freelancer, right? Like if you can like start, like you don't need to know you're going to even start consulting in the future to do this, but like, yeah, if you start writing, if you start doing videos, if you start doing LinkedIn posts, whether you're doing consulting or not, that it opens up opportunities for you, right? Like either it can be new jobs, maybe consulting. There's all of these interesting things. Like I've seen people who will post the first time ever on LinkedIn, and it'll be a picture of a dashboard in Power BI, and they'll talk about it. And then they'll have someone who asks them for help for a project on Power BI. Maybe it's not a huge project, maybe it's only $2,000, but like it is sometimes that easy for some people, where it's like, yeah, like especially if you're serving the right area and you're using the right, like with like dashboarding, it's very visual, like it catches people's attention. Like there are a lot of interesting ways that you can like build an audience and use that to then have consulting, which is what I've kind of done. Like I don't try to make a ton of money through my current like newsletter or YouTube. I get paid very little from YouTube.
Me too.
And right, like it's like I don't make money from YouTube. Occasionally I'll have a sponsor, but generally no. So really, it's more about sharing my knowledge and experience, and then getting that to go into clients. So that's my trade-off.
Yeah, basically to show what you're capable of, right?
Yeah.
And that you know what you're talking about. Yeah, very interesting. Something else. we're already at half an hour. We said we want to do roughly half an hour. What do you see in your future now?
In my future,
Yeah.
I mean, consulting for sure. I think that's something I enjoy doing, and I'll always want doing. Like I said, I brought the like I have like an academy where people are doing learning how to do consulting. So that's something else I'm doing on the side. Again, it's something that's like some income, not my focus. I think it's hard to say I want to teach something if I'm not doing it myself. And there's still lessons I'm learning. Like I said, like recently I've been pitching 7-figure projects. That's been fun. Those have been interesting lessons. That I'm happy and I can keep sharing with people, right? Because again, it's just these little steps that you keep taking as you're learning how to be better at it. And I'm still growing there, so it's a lot more to grow. We'll see what happens kind of in the future. I'm enjoying it thus far, but I'm sure I won't be doing it in the next, maybe at the end of 5 years from now. I'm sure something else will come up that'll be like, oh, this is fun too. But that's also just me in life. Like I switch every couple maybe 5-10 years.
Why not?
And eventually data engineering work can become very, very taxing. It's definitely one of the more taxing spaces. You make a lot of money, but people expect a lot from you. So.
Yeah, but let's say you have a team around you, and you're managing the team, and you're doing awesome things.
Yeah. That might be another route. You're right. Yeah. If I get a solid team, then I might be able to pull out myself of the weeds. That's the hard part too. It's like some people are definitely more geared towards like growing a team. I know a lot of people who like quickly will grow a team, and that's one of the things we want to. I've asked a few people to like make videos on. So I'm like, hey, I want to like I'm okay like getting people involved in a project, right? Like maybe I'll get like 2 or 3 people or 4 people, and I'll subcontract them. But taking that next step and hiring people and growing a business and having an agency, it's a whole nother level of stress, right? Because you just have to let go. You have to be willing to be like, hey, there's going to be mistakes made, and you're going to have to go put out some fires occasionally, like some client fires, some client that's going to be upset because something was done incorrectly. And you have no other recourse but just try to make it better, because people will do that. So
but not on purpose. Often,
no.
Stuff
Yeah,
just
yeah,
happens, right?
Yeah, stuff just happens, and it's hard for everyone to see everything. Like I've made my fair share of mistakes. I just also fix them very, very quickly. I think that's usually what I would tell people. Is like, if you do make a mistake, just make sure it's fixed, and usually it's fine.
That is fixable. And it's not that big that you can't fix it anymore.
Oh yeah, yes. I think I'm too paranoid, hopefully, to ever like run a delete statement somewhere that I would regret it. Or I'll often always make a copy of the table anyways. I'm like, I'm gonna delete this, but I'm gonna make a copy of it and wait a few days anyways. And then people can tell me if it really needs to be deleted. But yeah,
that's a good choice.
Yeah. It's just like constant paranoia, right? Like you're like, I'm gonna drop this, and obviously now I think Snowflake and a few other ones have like you can time travel and get those things back, but still, I think it's just that paranoia that's been built over the last few like the last decade, where it's like, am I in prod? Am I in test? Where am I? Where am I running this delete statement right now? Who am I making a mistake? So
there was a LinkedIn post about this where they described, okay, they worked on the console and had one console up of the dev and one of the prod, and then switched on the things and then deleted the whole prod system.
Yeah, exactly.
Was it a big company? Was it a big? I don't remember which one it was.
It could have been. Was this the one where the guy like got like go in the end, or because like they just started like Ryan? I think Ryan Peterman put out something like this where he was like posting something from Reddit.
No, that was. I think that was.
Oh, okay.
I know. I don't. No, I don't think so. That was something different.
But yeah, that's always a scary thing too, right? Like, am I in the right tab, right? Like sometimes it'll literally be like, which tab am I in? Am I in prod tab, or am I in the prod console? Am I in the dev console? I don't know.
Scary. So. But once you messed up once, then then you have that.
Yeah. I always tell people at Facebook it was fun because there was just one instance, like there was no prod or dev. The only thing, like, so when you would run like a pipeline in test, it would just automatically put a prefix on your table name. You could either make it your own prefix, like I often did, like rogue or like rogo underscore test underscore, or it would automatically just prefix it with test underscore. So the only thing separating you from dropping like prod was like the name of the table. It's like, well, so I would like read the name of the table like 3 times before I deleted anything. So I'm like, okay, I'm deleting the right table right now. Again, you could roll back, but like it was just one of those things like I don't want to figure out how to roll this back. I just don't want to go through that stress. I'd rather just drop the right thing.
That's true.
So,
that's very true. So your YouTube, I saw just before the stream, I looked 77,000 something.
Yeah, we're growing steadily. Maybe 100,000 somewhere next year. I've definitely slowed down. I've definitely focused more on my newsletter. Like I still put out a video, I think every 2 weeks or so. I just, you trying to put out content everywhere. Eventually you're just like, okay, I can't do everywhere at once. It's hard. And I'm putting out a newsletter a week, which some people do that easily. It takes time. And yeah. So that's good.
Is that on your Substack or is
yes.
that?
Yeah. In fact, my Substack I think will probably might get to 100,000 first. I think I've got like 61,000 on my Substack. So I think that might actually get to 100,000 first.
Yeah,
so
YouTube is very difficult to grow. It's like because we're in such a small niche and they
yeah, it's small. You have to you have to balance making intro content, which everyone will watch, and wanting to do some more nuanced content. And then like I always want to do projects, but then like I never I feel like I never have time to do projects. So I'm like, I want to do a project, but it's going to take time. So usually I'm just like, well, I'll do another video on, I think I'm doing a video, I think next on data modeling, which is what I wanted to cover. Yeah. I saw some data modeling stuff at 2 of my clients, one on the operational side, one on the analytics side, that I was like, this scares me. we maybe need to just do a quick video on like data modeling. Cause this scares me. Like, this isn't even like, there's like bad data modeling that's still trying to follow decent form. And then there's like, what?
What is that?
These were the choices you made? Did you open a book first, or you just decided that this was the right way? All right, well, I get it. I get it.
Nice. So. Yeah, I don't talk about it often, but like I'm a fan of your videos. You like these things are great, and how you cut this, I cannot cut this way. It's very interactive, very fast, very to the point, and I'm mostly blah blah blah, but really really nice. So yeah, and also we of the live stream we talked before that you're doing this intro content as well, where I'm like I can't do this again. I can't do another data engineering in 2024. It's like, oh, but you're always there and like, okay, this year this changed, and like that's awesome.
Yeah, I think I might do something like that for next year. But like I was watching something from, I think it's, what is he called? Like the Prime. I don't know if he's like a Netflix engineer, also has like he's got like 300,000 followers. Really? And he does like Twitch. Like he does Twitch, and then I think he takes all his videos and puts them on YouTube, and they're all good. And I just was watching one recently, and it was talking about like how, I mean, it's the whole tutorial hell thing that everyone gets into, right? Like you're like, all right, like I want to be a data engineer. And then like you start and like you run into your first few problems, then you get demotivated. And then like you just don't go through like the pain that is required to kind of grow. It's like, yeah, it's going to be painful. You got to like, if you just follow someone's tutorial, you'll never actually like learn how you're doing it. The reason probably a bunch of people learned how to do it in the past was because there were no tutorials. It was just like, I Googled a ton of things. I opened a bunch of books. Slowly, it all started making sense, right? Like, but if you have a tutorial that's really well laid out, that's great. But it just doesn't stick the same, at least not for me. Like, I've definitely tried to go through my fair share of tutorials. It's like, it just doesn't, without that urgency and that stress, it's just like, okay, that was information.
And that's also what I tell my students. Like, you have now everything. This course lays the foundation, but now you need to either make this project your own by adding stuff to it, or like change stuff out, like change out the data, try to do a different data structure, and so on and so on. Because otherwise, it's just another course, and you have the foundations, and you need some more experience on this.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, but YouTube's been fun. It's always fun. It's crazy. Like, I don't think I would have really thought I'd be this close to 100K. I was like, maybe I'll have like 50K. So I'm happy.
The prediction said next year in September if you keep going this.
Oh, nice. You're on like what's that called? Social Blade.
Yeah, I was just checking Social Blade.
Yeah. So sometime next year if I were to continue, and if it is, it is. If it's not, well, again. I'm pretty sure my Substack will probably be there. I think I'm growing at as long as the growth rate stays constant. I think it's like 3,000 or 4,000 a month right now. So I don't know, 60,000. Nice. Yeah, a little under 10 months. So maybe about the same, but it'll be close.
Yeah, but somehow YouTube is just fun, right? It's not making a lot of money, and you might not get 100,000 views on the stuff, but it's nice to do a video on a topic that you find interesting and cut it the way you want it, and then put it out there.
Exactly. It's like, you know what? At a certain point, you just gotta have fun with it, because otherwise, it's like if you get too caught up with views, you're just like, you're gonna be sad sometimes, because like every time you put in a ton of effort into a video, like it always does bad. But then you will put out a video that you're like, all right, let's make a very simple video, and like then it does well, and you're like, okay, well,
yeah, that's true.
It's part of it. It's part of the process, and it's fun. Yeah. It's fun figuring out what people like, and even those videos that like don't do well, they still sometimes lead to clients. Like some of the videos that I have that are like very niche, like something about airflow and why you're going to run into problems with it. I can point to multiple six figures of clients that's landed. And so it's like, you know what? Sometimes it's just about reaching the right audience, and some of these videos are not meant for 100,000 people. They're meant for 10,000 people, and that's okay.
Or the right 10.
Yeah, or the right 10. I don't know. If I saw 10 people, maybe I'd be a little bit sad. If it was 10 people, I'd be like, oh no, only 10 people watch this.
Well, 10 views is
that's me accidentally refreshing it 10 times and the YouTube counter counting it.
Yeah. Cool. So let me quickly check if there are some questions, and then we're going to get off. Do you have an ideal data engineering workflow? Well, that's if you want, you can talk about this, but it's not super freelancing.
Yeah,
focused.
Yeah, I'm not really sure about data engineering workflow. I mean, like IDE I use, like how I code. I mean, I use VS Code with Copilot when I'm doing stuff that's my own. I don't know if has Copilot come out with an enterprise version where I don't have to worry about putting in a key that's going to get leaked to everyone. Oh, my wife is saying yes, that does exist. She's shaking her head in front of me. So nice. She would know. She has to work for an enterprise. So
here was one. Are your freelance gigs mostly remote, or due to dealing with internal data you have to go on site, the offices?
Yeah, it's honestly a ton of remote, because like most things are in the cloud these days. So I have had to get laptops sent. Sometimes that's usually the thing. It's like you will get like a laptop sent to you. So then suddenly, whenever I'm on a plane and like I'm going on like a trip for 2 weeks, I need to bring like 5 laptops with me, because I've got like my laptop.
Oh, he's gone. He's gone. Let's see if it comes back. Maybe his computer crashed. I had one thing on my mind, and I wanted to ask him this, but I can't remember.
I don't know why. I just got weirdly disconnected. I don't know what happened there. Was it my internet or what? But yeah, I mean, I can wrap up maybe some, what was I saying there? Final thoughts there. Oh yeah, ending up with like 5 laptops, having to go places because you've got like 2 from companies and things like that. But generally, the internet's everywhere. You can connect to someone via VPN or through their virtual private cloud or something. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I'm guessing, especially with larger companies, that's a topic, right?
Yeah.
Same exactly. With the access cards. I remember seeing contracts like this at Bosch.
Yes.
I remember. I remember this for my contract.
Someone will even with like that. A lot of people will just do like Google Authenticator these days. But yeah, like sometimes I remember, or like when I worked at Facebook, I had like a little UB key all the time that you just hit and get that one-time password. So yeah,
Interesting. Now I remember. I wanted to mention this before. You said a lot of people don't have the struggle anymore with the like tutorials.
yeah,
Interestingly enough, with ChatGPT, it's gotten a lot easier.
yeah, yeah.
Like, because
But like,
lately,
is that good or bad? Right, like from a learning standpoint, like it's one of those things where it's like I am trying to figure out like what the line is, because like I've always told people, don't memorize functions, don't memorize like don't memorize these like one-off things, like just Google that stuff when you need it. So that's okay, great. But now it's like to the point where it's like, don't like, oh, you don't want to like write this function that whatever it might be yourself, or even go through thinking through the logic for it. Okay, try having ChatGPT do it. Although I feel like I've had bad results when it comes to more complex requests from ChatGPT. Yeah. If it's a basic like add a timestamp to the file name type things, which I've done a gajillion times, which yes, I will. I've literally like in Copilot, I'll just like put the comments, like be like the code below adds a timestamp to a file name, and then just like hit return. It finishes one line, hit return. That's fine. But yeah, it's like I'm curious when it comes to more complex things. We'll see whether it's good or bad.
Let's see. No, but for simple things, and I had recently I had that problem with I was preparing for a video, and I was working with Snowflake, and somehow I couldn't get the permissions right. And I was just asking ChatGPT, "Hey, I have that problem. I want to set the permissions this and that," and then it got me this. It got me the output, and then okay, that makes sense. Try to edit in. Didn't work. Go back to ChatGPT. Hey, that didn't work. Oh, I'm sorry. That's a mistake. You need to do it like this. And I'm like, okay.
I love that. I love that. Like, oh, I'm sorry. It's like, okay, but like, you gave me like, did you know this? Like the better advice already. I had a similar thing where I was doing something with a PDF, like reading a PDF, and like I like asked ChatGPT to do it. It did it, and I'm like, oh, you're using like this older library that's like an older version. Can you do a newer version? It's like, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, let me do this newer version. Like, why didn't you just do it from the start? I mean, I wouldn't have known either. Like if I would have been writing the code, who knows? I probably would have found something that would have been the older version too. But it's just funny.
There's actually one question that just came in. I wanted to ask you this because that's also an interesting thing. And especially for somebody who's just starting out, doing hourly or project-based?
Yeah, if you're just starting out, I say do hourly, because most people will be happy with that, and that puts the less amount of risk on you. You start understanding how long it takes you to do stuff. As you get better, yeah, definitely generally the goal is to push towards like this project-based, value-based approach where it's like, hey, you know what? This project's going to cost X amount. Just because like, it's more about, at the end of the day, what it's worth to the client and not the hours that you work on it, especially nowadays where we're able to work faster and faster on stuff. It's like, okay, I think there's like this one guy who does, who I've seen like their TikTok or something, and he's a freelancer, and he's like, in those situations, should you be punished for being better? Because that's essentially what happens, right? Right. Like, it's like, okay, I work faster, so I get paid less. Why would I want it? Like, the incentives are wrong here, right? Like, then I would just say I worked more, right? Then I'm just going to lie anyways and be like, well, why would I, like, if someone else who's worse is getting paid more, why shouldn't I get paid more? I'm going to add more time onto it just because that's not fair. But if you're incentivized to do a really good job, if it's worth it, like, hey, look, if this thing is worth the client paying $100,000 for, then yeah, you should probably charge them $100,000 for it, regardless of the amount of time it ends up taking, if it has that clear ROI. So I think that's usually important to, like, as you get better, you start figuring out how long things take, about what things should cost, and being able to give those numbers to people. So
yeah, but it's difficult. You said that before, when we were talking about large projects, where you said like, yeah, the clients, if it's just you, why should I pay pay you 300,000 if this is just you doing it. But it's the wrong thinking, right? If you're so good that you can do this on your own, like
yes,
why
that is always the challenge. That is always hard. People will always look at numbers. The eventual hard thing is like, you'll hit a cap to what people are willing to pay hourly, but you won't hit a cap what they're willing to pay for the project, which is the funny, like, it's just a weird thing, right? Like, because if someone's like, well, I only make $100 an hour and you're going to charge me $300 an hour for this thing, like, that's a lot of money. Where it's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, like, what's going to be worth, what's going to actually do for your team, isn't it worth it? So I think like making sure you have those conversations. I usually like start, like when I'm early on in a project, especially for ones that are very easy to see, like the person has a few different solutions they have in mind, or like you're not sure if they're like going to be cheaper or more, like they're willing to pay a lot or a little. I'll like put like 3 options where I'm like, hey, here's option 1, option 2, option 3 of what I can do for you. Here's the cheap option. Here's the like almost complete option, but does most of what you want. And here's the complete option, which is the most expensive. I was talking to someone, Matt Chung, one of the lives I did recently. He's from Amazon, and he does a lot of consulting too, but more on like the DevOps space. And his thing is like, he's like, look, I do things very quickly, and I do them well, and so that's expensive. He's like, look, and if that doesn't meet your price range, then that's not what you need right now, anyways. And I think that's part of it as well. Is like sometimes it's okay to hear no. Right. We're so eager to hear yes all the time when we're selling, especially, that we devalue our skill set. It's like, hey, if you can do something quickly and do it well, like that is worth more than someone doing it well and doing it slowly. Right. Like that is arguably worth more and should be paid more. And the right people will pay for it. So you just have to make sure you have enough prospects coming in that when you give that number, someone says yes. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's for me was with it's that way sometimes with partnerships from companies. Like if that I have a rate, and if you don't like this, and I'm doing a good job, then that's not for us. So that's fine.
It's fine. You have other things to do. Like there's so many other things that need to get done in a day. That's like I can't say yes to everything anyways. So and I think anytime I've ever compromised on my rates, I've always generally regretted it in the long run. Like you either have other projects you kind of now have to take on too, where it's like this project's paying me more and I like doing the work more, and this project's paying me less. Like you're going to inevitably dislike one of those projects now just because of that. And so generally, it's if you compromise, you'll end up being sadder.
But also sometimes you underestimate it. I've done a 30-second video for a company, and they want to use it as well on their pages and so on. And I was like, oh, okay, it's not a long YouTube video where I go through a project and everything, and it's okay to discount it. Actually, that 30-second video to prepare everything and then package this in and then cut it in a way that this fits into that 30 seconds was basically the same amount of work than doing a 10-minute one or a 15-minute one.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, oh, okay. I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah. Usually I recommend something similar with like, even with like project, like having minimums for kind of a like similar different reason, where it's like, as you keep getting better, like you should only accept projects that are of certain size, because let's say your goal is to hit $20,000 a month, and that's your goal, right? If you do that on $2,000 projects, that's 10 projects. Like that's really hard to mentally keep like what's going on, even if it's small things. It's just like each of those things has like that overhead that your brain's going to take up. And so it seems small, but it never is small. So yeah, like you eventually have to start thinking like, okay, what's the minimum that I'm willing to work for in terms of like per month for this project? Because you can only handle so much. Otherwise you start losing it a little.
What do you think? How many projects can somebody handle? Like just a one person?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say like generally, I'd say like maybe like 2 big projects is generally where I'm like, yeah, like 2 big projects, and then like maybe you've got some small scatters here and there on top of that, but like two big projects where it's like basically taking up your most of your time is generally where I say like that's probably a good cap. You're probably spending 140, 100 80 hours a month on that. And so maybe that gives you some leeway to do some other little things. But you also need to spend time, finding new clients and doing all the other things that are involved in consulting. So you can't, you don't want to kill yourself for 6 months, and then the next 6 months you have no work because you didn't spend any time trying to find new clients. Versus where you could have it a little more balanced out is probably a better goal.
All right. So we're through the questions. Nobody else had a question. Thanks a lot, Ben.
Awesome.
For this awesome stream. I think a lot of people, or we gave a lot to people here, a lot to start. I'm going to, so one thing I wanted to mention, if you're looking for the Substack, just go search on Google, Seattle Data Guy Substack, and it's literally the first thing that comes up. So that's how you find it. I'm going to put the link also in the description of the YouTube video afterwards.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah,
awesome talk.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And
thanks everyone for joining.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.